Okay, now on this experiment, what we're going to do wireless communication between one transmitter and one receiver. So what we'll do, we'll transmit a 7.2 megahertz signal from the transmitter, and that signal will be detected on the receiver. Then the receiver will upsample it by a factor of 3. Then afterwards, what we'll do is input 2 signals into the transmitter. One signal at 7.2 megahertz, another signal at 7 megahertz, transmit both, modulated of course, and then receive the modulated signal upsampled to 21 megahertz on the receiver board. So let's do the connection. So as you can see on the slide, here's how everything is going to be connected. So what we'll do first, we're going to connect the output of the function generator, which is set to 7.2 megahertz at 20 volts peak to peak. Then I'm going to add the receiver board, which will be connected to the oscilloscope, channel 1 of the oscilloscope. And as you can see, everything is already turned on, and as you can see, as I'm connecting, and you can see the output on the scope from receiver number 1. Okay. I'm going to adjust the impedance a little bit, or the resonance a little bit, by adding this loop onto the transmitter. And as you can see, as I'm screwing it, the amplitude of the receiver is very high on the scope. All right. So as you can see, board number 1, which is a transmitter, and this board number 2, which is the receiver, they are about 25 to 30 inches away from each other. And on the receiver, we are receiving the transmitted signal, but it's being upsampled to approximately 21 megahertz. And that is because the resonance frequency of the receiver is 21 megahertz. So it's designed to receive a lower frequency and to upsample it to a frequency that's 3 times. And just to do this on any semiconductor electronics today, you need very sophisticated equipment with PLLs and various things like that. And again, this wireless transmission is occurring without any power, without any electronics, without any chips, without anything, without any programming, without any code. It doesn't require that. And it's because the actual field, the actual intelligence that's doing it, it's a thought field. It's an energy field that's made of my thoughts, actually, and it's located in a spiritual dimension. And is activated with the input frequency of 7.2 megahertz. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to send 2 signals into the transmitter and receive the modulated signal into the receiver. All right. So now I'm connecting a 2-to-1 connector on the transmitter. Okay. All right. And then I'll connect a second input into the transmitter from the function generator. All right. So now what we have now is that the transmitter is connected to 2 outputs from the function generator. And one output is set to 7.2 megahertz, and the other is set to 7 megahertz. Okay. Now, if you look at the output now of the receiver, you can see the output is modulated. So let's adjust the scope so we can see the modulation a little better. And there you go. So you can see the modulated signal being received by the receiver, and which is being transmitted by the transmitter. And if we take off one of the outputs of the transmitter, you can see the modulation goes away. If I turn it back on, the modulation comes back. And that shows you the communication. The output amplitude that's being sent into the transmitter is 20 volts peak to peak. The reason why it's 20 volts peak to peak is because of the low resonance frequency. If the resonance frequency was much higher, let's say in the gigahertz, then the transmission distance would be thousands of miles. We wouldn't need to have cell phone towers or anything like that, because cell phone towers use RF propagation, which is not really in resonance. It doesn't use the power of resonance. But my technology, it uses resonance, and it doesn't use RF propagation because the signal is actually there's no propagation. So what's happening is this. When a signal goes into the transmitter, the receiver is also designed to have the same resonance as the transmitter. So they're both in resonance with each other. And when two things are in resonance with each other, they become one thing. So therefore, even though they are separated by, in this example, 24 inches or so, they're really not separated in the reality of things. They're actually one board. And it really doesn't matter how far apart these boards are. As long as they are designed for the same resonance, they will communicate with each other instantly, instantaneously, in zero time. Whether one board is located across the galaxy, if the transmitter is located on one side of the galaxy and the receiver is located on another side of the galaxy in a submarine 15,000 feet below the ocean, it will still receive the signal. Because that is how the universe works. The universe is perfectly imperfect, which basically means you could never have two things that are the same. But if you do have two things that are the same, they come together as one to maintain the perfectness of the universe. And that perfectness of the universe is what keeps everything in balance. So that's the reason why now we have this communication. I don't really want to call it wireless communication, but for lack of a better term, it should actually be called entanglement. That is the word a physicist or quantum physicist has given this type of communication, entanglement. But I call it communication with the spirit.